thank you all for your interest in a great story about a remarkable president. I was really happy to be able to write this book because Ronald Reagan is perhaps one of our best presidents ever. And we wanted to make sure that children like you understood more about what made him so special. Because one of you one day could be president of our country. And we want to make sure that we have strong leaders who understand how important it is to have ideas and how important it is to communicate. Ronald Reagan was known as the great communicator. You're already off on a great start, Tommy. And we want to make sure that you understand what happened during his time as president. Hi, please join us. Thank you. Hi, honey. So this summer, just about a few weeks ago, this book was first published. So you guys are really some of the first young people to be able to read the remarkable Ronald Reagan. He was also a family friend of ours. When my father-in-law, my husband's father, was a coach for the LA Rams out in California, Ronald Reagan was governor, and he would come to the football practices, and so he became a family friend. So there's a history there with our family, and one of the reasons why I wanted to tell his story, because I do think that young people need to know about the remarkable Ronald Reagan. So what I like to do is to ask you all to think about what you want to be when you grow up. Because most people don't know that Ronald Reagan was probably like you. He came from a small town in Illinois, and he had a lot of big dreams about what he wanted to do. Maybe play baseball, maybe be an actor, do all sorts of things. But he had big dreams, and I bet you guys think about what you want to do someday in your life. Well, Ronald Reagan worked really, really, really hard. And he lived during a time where people didn't have a lot of money. It was during the Depression. His mother would invite friends into their home and would give them a meal, ask them to stay, because a lot of people had lost their home or didn't have enough money to buy food. And Mrs. Reagan, Ronald Reagan's mother, had a big influence on him. She took him to church every Sunday, he and his brother, and she made sure that he learned to be kind to other people in his community. So we talk about that in this book. And if you see these illustrations, you might, if you've ever read Highlights magazine, the artist works for Highlights magazine, so you might recognize some of the type of artwork she does. Well, Ronald Reagan became a lifeguard too, and he saved 77 people by pulling them from the Rock River. You know how we know this? He had a stick where he would mark 77, or left 77 marks for each person he pulled out of the river. He went off to be an actor in Hollywood. He had a friend who said, "Why don't you go try?" And he was really nervous about it, but he went and tried to be an actor and made 53 films. He also was a radio announcer, and he would sometimes do baseball games where he was not even sitting there, but he would get the information over the wire, and he would describe it so beautifully it sounded just like he was there. Ronald Reagan played football at Eureka College, and one of his other dreams was to someday be a cowboy, and he played a cowboy in movies. But eventually he bought a ranch so he could ride a horse and be like a cowboy whenever he wanted. When World War II happened, he decided that he wanted to go and try to help his country, but he had poor eyesight, so they wouldn't let him go to war. And instead, they used his talents to make films for the troops so that he could help train the troops. Eventually, Ronald Reagan ran for governor in California and served 8 years. He and his wife, Nancy Reagan, served 8 years as the governor of California, and he worked really hard to have more jobs for the people there, to have lower taxes so their quality of life would be really good. But right when he was done with that, he decided this is the time to buy a ranch. So near Santa Barbara, high up in the hills, he bought Rancho del Cielo, where he had a horse that he could ride every day if he wanted. He would go out and chop trees and take care of the fields and the fences too. And that was really important to Ronald Reagan. He liked having that time to think about what he needed to do. People asked him to run for president, and so he did. He ran twice. He ran first in 1976 and lost. And you know, it's sometimes hard when you lose to decide you want to run again and try something else again. But he did, and he won in 1980 and went on to be President of the United States, the 40th president. He became friends with Mikhail Gorbachev. Do you know who Mikhail Gorbachev was? He was the leader of Russia at the time. And Ronald Reagan had actually made a speech telling Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down this wall. It was a wall that separated free people from those who were kept under communist rule. That meant their lives were not very free. They later became friends, and Ronald Reagan invited him to his ranch. That's really important when you're a leader. You can disagree on your issues or your ideas, but it's important to still recognize that people are humans who are trying to do their best, usually, as both of these leaders were. Well, Ronald Reagan spent his final days going to Rancho del Cielo, and he and his wife Nancy spent as much time as there as they could. He died in 2004 from Alzheimer's. That's a disease that some of you might know about. It's a disease that many people have family members who have suffered from Alzheimer's. It's a very sad, slow, debilitating disease. So the country said goodbye to Ronald Reagan in 2004. But he was such an incredible man, a remarkable man, that his legacy lives on. And our hope is that you all will read about him. In our book, we have highlights from his time when he was president and things that he did that were very special to help humans around the world. In fact, you can meet people today who say Ronald Reagan was one of the people who helped make them free when he told the communists to tear down the wall. He used to write a lot of letters. A good reader is often a good writer. And Ronald Reagan would tell you to read as much as you can, but also to use your skills writing. And we have a letter here that he used to write letters to boys and girls who would write him while he lived in the Oval Office. Can you imagine getting a letter from the president just to you? He also gave a lot of funny quotes or interesting quotes in his lifetime because he was called the great communicator. And you can read these in the back of the book. I like one where he said, "There's nothing better for the inside of a man than the outside of a horse." That means if you're working really hard, sometimes you get sore from riding a horse, you've probably spent time outside thinking about what you want to do with your life or what you need to do. And that's really important too. So Ronald Reagan really was a remarkable man, and I've enjoyed sharing his story with you. There's more to this story because I didn't look through every page with you. So I encourage all of you to find out what made Ronald Reagan remarkable, and I hope all of you have a remarkable life and live out your dreams. Thank you so much for coming today. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions? No. I hope you're reading this summer, right? Find your favorite books to read. Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
We're going to actually go right over here. We have a table set up. If you guys, I see you've got a book already. We can have Miss Allen sign it for you right over here at the table.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys. Follow me over to the table.